Okay, so you decided to go on Piers Morgan.
That ties directly into what happened on Piers Morgan.
Okay.
So 15 minutes, and he asked the usual questions you would expect around.
How was he with you?
He was really nice. He was very charismatic, likable, kind, and very.
Well, he's a funny guy.
He is.
He's kind of like Simon Cowell.
He's
in a way. You can see in they both worked on America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent. You can see if Cowell likes somebody, he's really on their side. If he doesn't like them, he's really not on their side. And Morgan is like that. And he's also the sort of guy who he'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you start playing games, then you're in serious trouble. So he obviously started by giving you the benefit of the doubt. He was probably, reasonably pleased with the video that he had seen and thought, that he would be inviting to begin with. So that worked out well. Okay, so...
And he asked the question, the last question was interesting. It's the one that stands out in my mind. And he goes, in all your hair, because he watched the video, here was producers. Someone went to the YouTube channel in the research notes, all right, give me something to... They found me talking about archetypes in Harry Potter. That I got from you.
Oh, yes, I see.
And he goes, and he thought I was some Harry Potter scholar or something. He goes, so given all your Harry Potter studies, what would the best piece of life advice be? And from all your Harry Potter studies, and I said, voluntarily enter the unknown. Which is what you were just talking about. Like, it might be, the unknown beneath the surface of Hogwarts. It might be facing the serpent that could turn you to stone when you see it, like fear. But you must do so voluntarily in order to save Ginny. And it's the voluntary aspect of that is, which is just classic. Everyone echoes that. They're like, okay.
Yeah, well, it's a very good thing to know.
But it's true.
Yeah, well, it's also
true.
It's also surprising because it belies the merely objective sense of the real. A situation is the same no matter how you encounter it. That's an objectivist perspective. A situation is radically different depending on how you encounter it. Kicking and screaming is very different than voluntarily, even if the stressor is the same. And there doesn't seem to be any particular limit to that, which is why, of course, all the heroic quest archetypal narratives are voluntary confrontation with truly terrible things. Otherwise, the quest has no real deep significance. Okay, so the Piers Morgan interview, that went well. That was a success. Yeah. And what was the consequence of that?
The next day, I go back into school. They call me back into the principal's office, and they say, dude, you went on Piers Morgan? Like, can you at least check in with us before you do Piers Morgan? Those are the exact words that was presented.
Right.
Can you at least check with us?
Yeah, but all bureaucratic entities will always say no to anything that's quest-related.
There's
obviously
no benefit to them.
There's only risk, right? There's only downside. Of course, this is partly why I think research has been almost completely stifled in universities. You cannot do risk-free research. Period. It's not possible. You can't just do the next safe thing. It's too obvious, first of all, and there's no excitement in the discovery. It has to be a risk, and the risk has to be real. And, we don't want to be too cynical about this either. It's not obviously the role of bureaucracies to take risks, right? It's the role of bureaucracies to set policies and strategies and to abide by the rules and move forward. Well, you see that in Harry Potter too, because there's a weird dynamic constantly in the Harry Potter stories that Rowling she was great at this because Harry's band, they're academically oriented and they're upward striving, but they're always rule breakers, right? And the grand wizard at the top of the ladder, he put all the rules that govern the educational institution in place and knows what they are, but is perfectly happy that Harry and his, band of ethical miscreants break rules.
Yeah, and he knows about it almost. They insinuate that he knows what they're doing the entire time.
Exactly, lets it go anyways. Yeah, well, that's that constant paradox. It's really the paradox of something like liberal versus conservative. The conservatives, fundamentally, I hate call the conservatives the bureaucrats because in our weird political world, things have all got flipped around. But generally speaking, the conservative types are much more rule-oriented and much less entrepreneurial. And so, but there's a dance between those two that's absolutely necessary. And there's no getting rid of the conflict, because most of the time you should follow the rules, but some of the time you definitely shouldn't. And wisdom is the ability to, and daring, that's the ability to tell the difference. Well, so you went on Piers Morgan. And so I don't blame your administrator for
Neither do I.
objecting. Although, you know, what you would have hoped for is something like a little elbow saying, you know, you shouldn't have done that, but good work. There was. Oh, good.
There was that. Well, the assistant principal who ascended and led that whole coup, and there was something different about his response. But the principal, the 30-year-old principal, who was always very helpful to me and like, helping me to get, or, you know, like, Warren, you should get your license in phonetics, and so you can have this new special ed license my first year. He was kind of a guiding hand before he suddenly had this power. And there was that at the end, and he was like, I would have done the same thing.
Oh, yeah, good.
He literally said,
Good.
So
that's the nod and the wink. Yeah. Yeah, every institution that's going to function needs that, right? Because you need the people who impose the rules and the structure, but they need to always be able to say, well, yeah, that there is a reason for not following the procedure in that particular case.
And he said, I need to run this up the flagpole. I'm going to need to call. This is just getting, I don't know how to respond to this. Piers Morgan, I don't know what this isn't in the playbook. This isn't.
Yeah, right. Right.
So they arranged for a meeting with the executive director and her team of lawyers. Remember, there's a board that runs this school. She answers to them, I guess. And she's never president. She used to kind of have her office over near mine, but I hadn't seen her at all that past year. She just said, and so she, there was a meeting with her. Yeah, I went into a room with that principal, the one who, and it was a Zoom call. It was just audio. And her lawyers were sitting next to her, and they just said, well, technically you didn't break any rules, so congratulations. Good luck to you. I hope you don't make a mistake.
Right,
I hate to lose you. And I thought, fair enough. I'll take responsibility for anything I say and do.
I had the same experience as you did, essentially, when I put up the first videos that brought me to public attention surrounding Bill C-16. And it was really the same sort of experiment that you ran. I'd put up a lot of my lectures on YouTube, and they'd got a moderate amount of attention and a reasonable amount for the time, because I started putting them, I think, in 2013 on YouTube, which was very early in YouTube development. But they hadn't attracted anything like viral attention. And then this idiot virtue signaling bill was put into law by our idiot virtue signaling prime minister. And I made 3 videos objecting to that and some university policies. That was purely experimental, because I was still playing with the technology and wondering what use it was and seeing if I could lay out a structured argument as well. I edited it quite a bit, actually, that one.
Interesting.
And that went viral. And then I was called into the principal's office, so to speak, at the university, which kind of surprised me to begin with, but not exactly, because they didn't know what to do with this. And unsurprisingly, I mean, whether the dean, for example, had any right to say anything whatsoever with what I was doing with YouTube in my home, in my free time, is a completely different issue. But I suggested to them that the University of Toronto could do the daring thing and have a debate on free speech. And so that was a concrete plan, right? And they were looking for something to do. They didn't know what to do. And that is what they did. And for better or for worse. And that was much better than many of the things that they could have done. Now, it still worked out that it became impossible really for me to keep my position there, although I did for about a year. But it is also the case to know that if you're going to step outside of the bounds of normal propriety, doesn't hurt to have a plan, especially for the people that you confuse, because they also don't know what to do, and they're going to hunker down, and they're going to dissociate themselves from you if you are deemed to be a risk, especially a contamination risk.
Yeah.
And so, and the topics you were discussing, especially on the rolling side, would have that element because, of course, to the degree that the propaganda surrounding the idea of transphobia is effective, you can easily be tarred and feathered and run out of town on a rail.
Mm-hmm.
But you weren't. That didn't exactly happen in the school. So
You said something interesting about, and I agree, that the university, the dean has no right in your own home what you do with YouTube. How does that correlate to the dean's business or the university's business? What's interesting is that when you go into the handbook, which after all this occurred, I went and kind of poked into, it's written that they have every involvement at this school into whatever a teacher says politically on social media, if they say, and there's no clear objective definition of where that line is.
Of course. So they just reserve to themselves the right. Yeah, the College of Psychologists has basically done exactly the same thing in Canada. What the people that I'm in trouble for in relationship to my license. It's like,
Yeah.
there are rules apparently about the way I can conduct myself, but the only way you find out what those rules are is by being accused of breaking them. It's not like they're written down, because of course they can't be, right? And so that's also a terrible thing, because, and this is something that's happening in our culture very rapidly, and apparently is something that de Tocqueville prophesied back in the mid-1800s, that if totalitarianism came to democracies, it would come in the form of essentially mid-level bureaucracies invisibly making everything daring illegal, right? And so, and those open-ended policies are precisely the sort of thing that they're like comprehensive traps.
And
So they could have actually gone after you.
Oh yeah, it was a unique contract to begin with, and I remember signing that when I first agreed on to that school. It said you could be fired for any reason, no reason, at any time.
Yeah.
And that's not a reality at your average high school. So that stood out to me. I thought, interesting. Okay. Well, this is a new world. This is an unusual world that I don't. So.
Yeah. Well, you could see also, though, you could actually understand, I would say, the reasons for a contract like that at a school like that.
Sure.
Because so many possible things could go wrong that the rules arguably would have to be more comprehensive to cover any possible occurrence.